Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and last night I finally watched Madam Web. I decided to wait until it was on streaming on Netflix to see it, because a lot of stuff I heard, not only on the internet but also like from some close friends, was that like the movie was just awful, and it was. Like everything that like other YouTube videos and my friends who have seen it told me about, like, it was all true, and it was just as bad as they said. Like one of my friends at the college I went to, he saw Madam Web, and he straight up told me that that all they did for a title card was just boring text that was colored white. And then he said that that the title cards that I make for my short films are more creative than that. So first of all, I took that as a ringing endorsement for my own work, and second, that basically told me that that this movie did like the bare minimum, if even that. But anyway, so I finally saw the movie yesterday, and holy cow, like it was worse than I thought. So I got prepared by drinking, by getting a couple bottles of beer last night, and I went through both bottles of beer. I wish I drank more, because I probably would have had more fun just laughing at the film and how horrible it was. So I'm just gonna go through the entire film on this, like, just to paint a picture of how bad it really was. So it starts with the main character, Cassandra Webb. Her mother is in the Amazon researching spiders, as they say, and we're introduced to her and Ezekiel Sims, who everything that people criticized about this film is completely right. Like, the shots are just so weird. They do constant like zoom in and zoom outs in the middle of a shot for no reason at all. Like, especially that scene where they actually find the spider, which is a CGI spider, a terrible CGI spider at that. And like, it's constantly zooming in and zooming out on both Ezekiel and Constance Webb. And the thing that was mentioned about Ezekiel was that like his lines are ADR, and it's poorly done ADR. And that was actually worse than I thought. Like, I assumed that it was gonna be like, oh well, the voice just doesn't match, but like the lip syncing is okay. No, like there's one or two instances where they get close to lip syncing the voice, but that's about it. Like, every other time, the lips don't match, the lip movements don't match the voice at all. There's sometimes where you can actually hear the audio breaks while he's trying to say a single sentence. It just looks so weird, and every time he speaks, it basically takes me out of the film. So, anyway, Ezekiel kills Constance and the other people, and the spider people in the Amazon who have Spider-Man powers. They show up wearing suits that look kind of like Carnage, like as in the comics Carnage, not the Venom Let There Be Carnage. But they take Constance, have one of the spiders bite her, which is supposed to heal people, but she ends up dying anyway. And at the same time, the baby Cassandra is born. And one of the spider people says that he'll be there when she comes back.
Damn.
When that is, nobody knows.
Ryder's his next hit.
Fast forward to about 30 years later, and
he's going to kill him in 3 minutes if I don't get to him.
And Dakota Johnson, playing Cassandra Webb, is doing her job as a paramedic, driving an ambulance. She comes across those three girls who eventually Ezekiel Sims targets at various points in her day, like I think now one of the girls is called like Anya or something, who lives in the same apartment as her. Maddie Franklin, who the only the only way they know each other is because Maddie flipped her off while she was driving an ambulance. And then Julie Carpenter, played by Sydney Sweeney, whose mom got saved by Cassandra Webb. And they know each other through the flimsiest plot devices. So anyway, it shows like a day in the life for Cassandra Webb. During one rescue gone wrong, she falls into the river.
If I don't find Jack Ryder in 2 minutes, dead.
And that unlocks her spider powers, seeing into the future. Which, by the way, the editing on that is just so weird. Like, there's sometimes where like you don't know what's real and what isn't, and yes, sometimes that's by design, but it's just too confusing at times. Like during that baby shower or whatever, Peter Parker's mom is having that guessing game over what the baby's name is, which, again, another thing that a lot of people mentioned, like they never really say Peter Parker's name in the film, even though technically he appears at the very end as a baby. So
think you can get
so
to me? Many
they're
have tried.
constantly dancing
None have
around the
managed
fact that, like, oh, this is Spider-Man. And apparently the reason why was because they originally wanted to connect the movie to the Raimiverse, which wasn't possible at all because the movie takes place in 2003. Then they wanted to connect it to the Andrew Garfield universe, but that wouldn't work either. Even though I think that actually would have worked better than the Raimiverse, but that, I don't know. That's their problem to figure out the timelines and stuff. But anyway, the point is, like, they screwed up so hard, they weren't able to connect Madam Web to any of the Spider-Man movies, so they gotta come up with a new one now. So anyway, shows Cassandra's day-to-day life. She gets her powers through apparently dying, and she can suddenly see the future now, and it happens in weird ways, like just a few seconds into the future, basically. Then we cut to Ezekiel Sims, who is basically Batman at this point, but with Spider-Man powers. And he has this nightmare of the three girls that Cassandra Webb met. They eventually grow up and become Spider-Woman, and they kill Ezekiel for revenge on him killing Constance and stealing the spider. Which, speaking of, at the very beginning of the film, Constance seems so surprised that Ezekiel is going to turn on her when he says in the literal first minute of his screen time that he only followed her just to get his hands on the spider. And he has this stupid motivation for it of, like, nobody helped him when, like, he was a kid or something like that, and that's it. He doesn't elaborate or anything. He just says that, shoots Constance, takes the spider, and leaves. But anyway, so Ezekiel Sims is having nightmares of the future as well, about how these three Spider-Women grow up and kill him. And and basically he kills an NSA analyst, takes her credentials or something and gives it to his Alfred person in the chair called Maria, I think. And then he sets out to find the three girls who apparently technology is so advanced in 2003 that recalling all the details from a dream that you had is able to figure out not only a perfect sketch of those Spider-Women, but also age them down by approximately 10 years. which the 10 years thing, Maria, whatever her name is, just literally pulled that out of her ass. So Cassandra takes some time off after she gets several more visions. She goes to this subway station, meets the 3 girls on a subway train, sees a vision of this old guy just going after them and killing them just by touching them. And then the vision ends and she sees the guy coming, so she gets the 3 girls and her off on the train. And that's when Ezekiel Sims just pops out of nowhere in his, like, evil Spider-Man costume. And I gotta say, this is one of the worst, to me at least, this is one of the worst costumes I've seen in a superhero movie. Like, it looks like a black skin-tight suit with red lining on it and a red lens, and that's literally what it looks like. Like, it looks like he's wearing a skin-tight trash bag with the red lining. But anyway, so Ezekiel shows up, he attacks the girls. Cassandra Webb somehow gets them to safety, parks them like in the woods, in the middle of nowhere, which, in hindsight, they do sort of explain a little bit that the reason why is because, like, there's no cameras there, so that Ezekiel and his accomplice can't find the girls, which, okay, but I'm pretty sure that Cassandra doesn't know that, the girls don't know that. But either way, Cassandra tells them to just stay put in the woods and says that she'll be gone for 3 hours. Like, seriously, no one is going to stay in the woods for 3 hours, especially when it's dark at night, and especially when you're like a teenager and you're always hungry. Anyway, so the girls, of course, go to a diner, get some food. They start dancing for these boys, and they're dancing to Britney Spears' "Toxic." Meanwhile, Cassandra goes back to her apartment, because one of the things that Julia Cornwall said was that he was crawling on the ceiling like a spider. And that triggered a memory from Cassandra about, like, the spider people and the spider that her mother Constance was researching. So she goes back to her apartment, looks up her notebooks, and I think one of the dumbest scenes in the movie, like, she's conversing with her cat, and her cat is actually answering her as if it understands what she's saying. Like, she's going like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this kind of spider?" And the spider meows as a response. And she just says, like, "Oh yeah, me neither." So she learns about the powers that they have, and she actually tries to, like, crawl on her wall and ceiling, but can't. And eventually, after she finds out what she's researching, she has a vision of Ezekiel coming back to kill the girls in the diner, and also kills Cassandra as well. So she uses the lyrics for "Toxic" to time when she's supposed to ram a taxi into the diner. Which, speaking of, one of the things I noticed was that when she first evades Ezekiel Sims, Cassandra steals a car. Apparently, no one talks about how the taxi got stolen. Like, not even in that, like, police radio thing about how like, they're looking for both Ezekiel and Cassandra. Like, no one mentions how the taxi was stolen, so the police aren't looking for a stolen taxi. Also, speaking of, the cops barely are barely there. Like, they're not actively looking for Cassandra Webb, they're not looking for Ezekiel Sims, like, nothing. So Ezekiel gets there, Cassandra rams the car into him, he grabs her wrist, and For some reason, his poison doesn't really affect her all that much, because apparently he didn't hold on long enough. Even though I'm pretty sure earlier in the movie he has held on a lot longer to other people, and they died pretty quick. So Cassandra holds them all up in a motel, has a vision where she goes back to the diner and meets Ezekiel. Apparently Ezekiel can have the same vision, because they were talking about exactly what Cassandra needs to know about the spider people and why he's going after them, all of that. So apparently he's got the same vision powers too. So because of that, Cassandra drops off the girls with Ben Parker, who I can't remember if I said this, but Ben Parker is her medic partner, played by Adam Scott. He does decent, but I don't know, I've seen him better. So then she goes to the Amazon for a straight week. And in that straight week, apparently Ezekiel doesn't know where they are. He didn't pick up on the taxi that Cassandra stole. And also in that time, Peter Parker's mom, I think her name is Mary, her water breaks. So the girls and Ben all take her to the hospital. Which I'll get back to that in a second. So Cassandra goes back to the Amazon. He meets up with that one spider dude who apparently is in normal clothes now instead of that spider garment. Tells her about what happened to her mother, what happened with Sims, and he says that because he stole the spider, Ezekiel got cursed with seeing his death. And right when he said that, I started wondering, well, how come the spider people didn't just go after him? Hell, why didn't they just go after Ezekiel after he shot Constance? They all have Spider-Man powers. They could have easily just dodged his. They could have just easily dodged gunshots and taken him out, but they didn't do that. Which, speaking of, another crappy CGI moment that they show again in here is that when they pick up Constance and take her along the trees, it looks like those PS2 graphics where you're jumping from platform to platform, and it just looked so awful. So the spider dude reveals to Cassandra that she can see into the future, she can change people's fates, that kind of stuff. And then he just leaves. So the next time we see Cassandra, she's back in New York, while Ben, Mary, and the girls are going to the hospital. Cassandra sees a vision about how Ezekiel finds them and blows up their car with everyone inside using a bomb, which he never uses. He only uses once in the entire film. She steals an ambulance instead of a taxi, hits Ezekiel, gets him blown up by the bomb, and she tells Ben and Mary to run, and she and the girls take the ambulance and go towards this fireworks factory while Ezekiel is chasing them, and he literally walks right past Ben and Mary and just doesn't do anything, which, again, another little nitpick that I thought was a little bit weird, because back at the diner, Ezekiel smashed dude's head in for just being there, so, you could have assumed that he didn't want to leave any witnesses, right? Well, in the subway, there's a bunch of witnesses. In the diner, there's a bunch of witnesses aside from that one dude that he domed, and of course, Ben and Mary Parker are witnesses. Ezekiel walks right past them, doesn't do anything. So they get to the fireworks factory. Well, no, sorry, it's not even a fireworks factory or whatever it was. There's a Pepsi Cola sign over it, which Another thing, they had a huge product placement for Pepsi. Like, there's a scene where Ben gives Cassandra a Pepsi, which she feebly tries to open but doesn't actually open and drink. And then they got like a giant Pepsi Cola sign in like the area of the final fight. So Cassandra basically tells the girls when to go up the stairs and stuff, and somehow they get a helicopter to come down to them, which, again, apparently the police are looking for Cassandra Webb as well as Ezekiel Sims, and not once do they tell her to, like, to surrender or anything. But Ezekiel gets knocked out with some fireworks at the time being. They try to escape. Ezekiel appears, and he punches a firework that hits the helicopter. And I get that he's got, like, the same powers as Spider-Man, but I don't remember Peter Parker literally punching a firework in midair. I mean, if he has, then, like, that's on me for forgetting that, but I don't think he's done that. Anyway, so Ezekiel Sims, he punches a firework, destroys the helicopter. That causes all three girls to be in, like, mortal peril or something like that. Ezekiel, for some reason, takes off his mask to glare at Cassandra, talking about how, like, she can't save them all, which she uses her powers to do that astral project like in Doctor Strange, and saves all three girls. And then she defeats the villain by seeing a vision of him, by seeing a vision of one of the S on the Pepsi Cola sign crumbling down to this one specific area, and then she literally just backs away from Ezekiel. And of course he follows her, the S hits him, and he falls to his death, just like in his vision. Which, another thing that's stupid, that a character with Spider-Man powers falls to their death. I get that they don't have webs because Peter Parker develops that himself, but I feel like he could have just, like, grabbed something with his hand and stuck to the wall. Like, the only time that I have ever seen Spider-Man, like, fall from a great height is technically there's two times. Once in the comics when the Vulture flew up high in the air and threw Peter down, and, like, there wasn't anything to web, so, like, he couldn't do anything but, like, fall onto a building. And then the second time was technically in Avengers Infinity War, when Peter, like, fell from Thanos' ship, and because, like, they were almost out of orbit, like, he obviously couldn't like, touch anything. So, but anyway, so Ezekiel falls to his death in a stupid scene where he gets crushed by the Pepsi Cola sign. Cassandra also falls into the river. She gets hit in the face by a firework. Julia pulls her out, and then the three girls perform CPR, because Cassandra taught them CPR in the lamest version of Chekhov's gun. The next scene that they show is in the hospital where Mary and Ben are looking at baby Peter. Again, still not saying his name. And then the next room, the three girls are with Cassandra, who's now blind. And they talk about how, like, Ben's an uncle now, and he doesn't have any responsibilities. And Cassandra just smirks and says, like, oh, that's what he thinks. And I don't know if that was supposed to be an implication that she knows about his death. But if she does, then it kind of makes me wonder, like, if she just knows and just won't do anything to stop it. Like, I get that, like, that's kind of required for Spider-Man to exist.
Now that all the
But there's also other versions of Spider-Man where Ben Parker was still alive.
I'm sure it came from over there.
Peter was still Spider-Man. Like, there was an episode of the Spider-Man animated series where a variant of Spider-Man had his
Over here!
had
Now!
both
I
Aunt
found
May and
someone!
Ben Parker still alive, and he still turned out fine. But anyway, so a doctor comes in, asks for immediate family, and that's when Cassandra reveals that she's basically adopted all 3 girls. And then the final scene is having the 4 of them in Cassandra's apartment, and she's talking about how she sees the girls' futures, and it shows like a little montage of the 3 girls as Spider-Women in their suits, and it shows Madam Web in her suit for only like 2 or 3 seconds. And then it ends on Cassandra Webb saying that the best part about the future is that it hasn't happened yet. Which I got no idea what that's supposed to mean, but whatever. So, basically, and there's no post-credit scene, by the way. This isn't the MCU. Which, funny enough, apparently Dakota Johnson was lied to that was an MCU film. And then supposedly she fired her agent after the first trailer. So, basically, this movie isn't the worst film I've seen, but it is the laziest. Like, there's a lot of films I've seen that don't put in that much effort, but this is from a big company like Sony, and for them to just basically not care about this, like, nobody cared about this. Like, the person who did the cinematography didn't care because the shots were crappy. The person who did the audio didn't care because there was crappy ADR for Ezekiel Sims and his actor. The effects were meh, like it was bad CGI for most of the time. The dialogue was stupid, like there was no chemistry between Cassandra Webb and Ben Parker as friends. I only laughed a couple times at this film, and like I don't really think it was intentional. Like there was a scene where Cassandra was being awkward about mothers dying during childbirth. Like, I'm not sure if that was supposed to get a laugh or not, but I mean, I laughed once and that was it. And then I laughed kind of at the Britney Spears song Toxic playing while Ezekiel Sims is killing the girls, which I'm pretty sure that was kind of a tongue-in-cheek moment, but either way, it still wasn't very good. The editing also sucked.
What number comes after 3 when the night
there were times where like they would edit a shot and it was supposed to be the same shot, right? Or like they had those weird zooms where it looked like it was a found footage thing and it wasn't. And the acting was like, again, I'm not trying to fault the actors on how they were, but just
what happened, Dark Knight? Did you
I don't know, I've seen Dakota Johnson do better, and I've seen Sydney Sweeney do better. I mean, Sydney Sweeney's like 5 minutes of screen time during that one movie Night Teeth where she was a vampire was better acting than this film. Which is a shame because apparently Sydney Sweeney's the only one who actually took this seriously. Because in that one featurette she talked about how she begged the filmmakers to let her hang from the ceiling during her Spider-Woman scene. Which, that shouldn't be something that you gotta beg for, because that's something that Spider-Man and Spider-Woman and people with spider powers are supposed to do. So, I don't know. I don't know, this movie was just lazy on all fronts, just felt like they didn't care. Sony is so dead set on making their own cinematic universe that they'll just throw anything at the wall at this point. Like, they had that one thing about that villain called El Muerte, which nobody knows who that is. There was gonna be a project about Jackpot, who I've only seen Jackpot in one Spider-Man issue.
It's not my fault.
And like that was from like years ago when I was still in middle school. Going forward with this, again, it's just like I was saying for Morbius. I'm not very excited for this Sony Spider-Man universe. Like, you got Kraven the Hunter, which, yeah, my interest is a little bit piqued because the movie's going to be rated R. But, unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily make a movie good. Like, people were saying that the Venom movie should be rated R, and aside from, like, a little bit of blood and more swearing, like, I don't think it would have been that much better. And the same thing goes for Venom: The Last Dance. Like, apparently that's supposed to be the last film in the franchise, which I don't know if they're meaning the last film in the Venom franchise or the last film in their Cinematic Universe franchise. But I don't know. If it is the last one in the entire Sony Spider-Man Cinematic Universe, then I'm okay with that. Because, like, everything they've put out was okay at best with the first Venom film, and then just lazy and bad at worst. Like, if I was to make a tier list right now of the 4 movies that have come out, it'll be like Venom, Venom 2, Morbius, Madam Web.
I've destroyed the container.
And there's just...
Good.
I don't know. I'm just not excited to see how they go forward with this.
We must not allow these puppets to take the title.
I might or might not see Kraven Hunter when it comes out.
Kill you, Batman!
I'm not planning on seeing The Last Dance. And personally, unless they change something really quick, such as they actually do a Spider-Man movie, I don't think a lot of people are going to be seeing these movies either. But that's really it for me. I know that technically this was a very late review for the film, but I just could not spend my money on this film. I couldn't. So, with that all said, I will see you guys tomorrow for another review, talking about a movie that, shocker, I consider is actually worse than this. So, I'll see you guys then. Bye.
As I was saying, I've destroyed mine. I take it you've done the same?
In a manner of speaking, yes. Titan is too powerful to be used against me. I needed it all for myself. Now, do me a favor and die! Ah! No!
I knew I couldn't trust you, Bane, so I used you instead.
What?
Simple. You rounded up the remaining Titan. Now, I can destroy it.